All right. So, week 9. All right. So I did the math and I looked it up. It looks like on the season, my record is 29-39. Week 8, week 7, I went 4-5. Week 8, I went 3-5. So, moving the wrong direction. I think I've only had one week. Most weeks I'm, just missing it. I think I had a really bad week early on in the season. But every week I'm losing ground except for one exception. And I don't even want to do the math to figure out how many units I'm down. But, uh, we got a whole half of the season left to go. I can easily come back. I tend to do better in the playoffs and on my future bets. Future bets are going to be a little mixed. I didn't get to play as many as I wanted to. The Eagles and the Vikings are paying for me. The Raiders are absolutely letting me down, and that's probably what I had the most money on. So I guess we'll just have to see how things play out in the playoffs. But tend to do better there. Hopefully I can scrape my way back to even starting with here in week 9. I got a lot of picks. Decent amount of teams on bye. I think there's like 8 noon games, 2 afternoon games, and then Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football. First game I got on the docket, Packers at Lions. Okay, so the Lions are getting, or they have Amon-Ra St. Brown back. DeAndre Swift is back. Their offense is starting to look a little bit more like their offense lately. The Packers are bad. I think there were some signs of life last week. No, it was last week they played the Bills. So, yeah, no, they're just not a good team anyway. But ultimately, so it's Lions plus 3.5 at home. Follow me here. This is going to come up a few times. Home underdog in the division. Now, the Lions don't have a whole lot to play for. I think they're 1-6. Packers are 3-5. Theoretically, could still get back in this. Packers and Aaron Rodgers historically have owned the Lions, obviously, but home underdog in the division. I get 3.5 points. I'll take the Lions to cover and hope for the best. That Packers offense has really not been high powered. Their defense has been, I think they're decent against the pass, but bad against the run. Either way, I like the Lions offense to be able to score some points, keep it close, maybe even win. And I don't think the Packers are going to run up the score by any means. So I'll take the 3.5 points. Next game, the Vikings at Washington. So this happens every couple weeks, right? I bet on the Vikings. I get burnt. I swear off the Vikings. A couple weeks go by. I get lulled into some complacency. Although I don't think they've covered very well lately. They're pretty bad against the spread. They probably covered against Arizona last week, but I think the prior week they didn't. Prior couple weeks they didn't. But I don't know. I like the Vikings -3 in Washington this week. This is a game the Vikings should definitely win. Although Washington's 4-4 and they've been scrappy at times, I think their defense is okay. And the Vikings haven't been world beaters. I think they've underperformed what they could possibly do. They just added T.J. Hawkinson. I don't think he'll really be an impact this week. But I think just the Vikings are a better team. Washington's on a 3-game win streak, actually. They beat the Bears, the Packers, and the Colts. Vikings are better than all 3 of those teams. I don't think it's a stretch to say that. So, another interesting fact here is a Taylor Heineke revenge game. Taylor Heineke was like a practice squad guy. Might have been a backup QB for the Vikings if he put his foot through a plain glass door and tore up his tendons in his leg. Ended up missing a season and then was maybe back on practice squad. Ended up in Carolina, and now he's in Washington, kind of following Ron Rivera that way. Might have been a Scott Turner connection there too, but interestingly enough, Heineke revenge game. But let's not forget, Kirk Cousins was drafted by Washington. They didn't want him. Franchised him, realized their mistake, and he's like, nah, I'll hit the open market. I'll make bank. Vikings will pay me, and I'll be happy there. So this is a revenge game for Kirk Cousins. You don't think he forgot. He didn't forget. Kirk's coming in there. He's going to be ready to play. I'll take the Vikings -3. And Justin Jefferson is going to get in the end zone this week. Calling it right now. I don't know if I'll bet on that. I'm not going to add it to my docket, but I think it's going to happen this week. Next game, Miami at Bears. All right, so nice thing about this is Miami, Florida team, Bears, Chicago. It's November. You'd think that it'd be pretty lousy weather, and that would give the Bears some advantage here. Luckily, this has been a really warm November. I checked the weather. You normally don't, so they play outdoor Soldier Field. It should be in like the high 50s. The high in Chicago that day is 63 degrees, kind of partly cloudy. Miami boys should be okay. That's a talent-ridden roster. Speaking of which, Tyreek Hill, he was playing in KC before outdoors, so he'll be all right. I think Miami's a better team, better coached, especially offensively. And the Bears, they just brought in Chase Claypool, who I wouldn't expect to have an impact in Week 1, but they traded away their best defender. So you got to think that might start to matter. Um, I think their record is actually decent. I don't know if they're 3-4. I don't know, but I don't think the morale in the locker room is very high for the Bears. And I think Miami's going to stomp them. And people are going nuts about Justin Fields like playing better. It's like he still hasn't done anything impressive through the air. I know he doesn't have receivers, but it's really he just started running the ball more, whereas they kind of tried to keep him in the pocket. And now they're just like, okay, well, since it seems like you suck, let's see what we can do if we actually let you run and not worry about you getting hurt. So I mean, he might do some damage on the ground this week, but I don't think they'll be very competitive against a Miami team that's really all in this season and is starting to find their groove. So I'll take Miami's minus the 4. Panthers at Cincinnati. So this might be a bit of a reactionary take, just because Cincinnati lost on Monday Night Football in pretty spectacular fashion against the Browns. But I'm going to take the Panthers plus 7. Seven's just feels like a lot of points for a Cincinnati team that has been up and down this season. And the Panthers, so they're coming off a close loss, or they're coming off a close loss versus the Falcons, and then they beat Tampa the week prior. So, I don't think PJ Walker's particularly good. Haven't really seen him play. I know DJ Moore had a pretty good game the other day. I think if there's one thing from afar, just watching highlights and not really watching the games, is that PJ Walker's not afraid to sling it in there and let his playmakers make some plays. So, I'll just take the Panthers plus 7 to cover. That's all I'll say about that before I expose myself. Chargers at Atlanta. Chargers are coming off a bye. The Chargers, I've been saying it all year. I think they're a bad team. They're a disappointing team. They're underperforming. I don't particularly like their coach or their coach. I don't know, but the offensive coordinator, not a fan of. I think there's still a lot of choke in the Chargers. They're still not really there. I think they should come in and win this game, but they're out. Mike Williams. I don't know if he hit IR, but he's going to be out a couple games now. Keenan Allen is still out. You got to wonder when he's just going to decide to retire, because he still has not been able to find his way back on the field. So you got like Gerald Everett and then Josh Palmer, who I think Josh Palmer might be a decent player. We're still kind of waiting and seeing. But definitely a big loss. They're going to have to lean on Eckler. That should probably be enough. But, Atlanta has been a scrappy team. They've been playing teams close all season. I think they're 6-2 against the spread. They're one of the best teams in the NFL against the spread. The Chargers, on the other hand, are not. And Atlanta is getting Cordero Patterson back. So I kind of like them. It's only plus 3, but I'll take the Falcons at home plus 3. I think Cordero might do some work in this game, and we'll see what happens from there. Colts at Patriots. I actually waffled on this one, and to be honest, I should probably avoid it, but ended up talking myself into it. So, two good defenses, Colts and the Patriots. Offenses that have been kind of up and down, but ultimately, so the Colts are down Jonathan Taylor. They've benched Matt Ryan, so it's Ellinger and then Dion Lewis, who Dion Lewis is actually, I think, might be decent, but questionable kind of offensive thing going on there, and their offensive line has played terribly. And the Patriots' defense is played really well. So, I kind of like the Patriots in that matchup. Colts defense has played well, but the Patriots' run game has been really strong. Ramondre Stevenson has been a boss, and with Damian Harris kind of maybe missing this week to injury, maybe playing in a limited role. I think he played in a limited role last week. But Stevenson's a good player, and Belichick knows what he needs out of his quarterbacks to win some games. So it's 5.5 points. So it's Patriots minus 5.5. That's the side I'm taking. 5.5 started to scare me a little bit. They're good defenses. They're going to be running the ball a lot. Both teams are going to be trying to run the ball a lot. So 5.5 points, when it's a kind of a low-scoring game, 5.5 points becomes a pretty big spread. But ultimately, I look back, last 4 games, Patriots beat the Lions by 29 to 0. Then they beat the Browns by 18 points. They lost to Chicago by 17 points. I think that was a primetime game that I got handled in. I've been doing really bad in the primetime games that I actually have bets in. They got handled by Chicago. That was a strange blip. And then they just beat the Jets last week by 5. I think the Jets are a better team than the Colts. And they just beat the Jets by 5. So can they get a half more point against the Colts? I'm hoping that they can. I'll take the Patriots minus 5.5. Next game I got, Buffalo at Jets. Speaking of the Jets, who are actually a decent team. So last week, the Bills destroyed the Packers. This was another Monday night game, or Monday. This is 2 weeks ago. Or was it Sunday Night Football? Can't remember. It might have been Sunday Night Football last week. That's what I'm going to go with. But anyway, the Bills absolutely handled the Pack. Pack never looked like they had a chance in this game. Bills were destroying them. Packers covered the 14.5. So when you're looking at these big spreads, it's just really tough in the NFL to know if it's going to play out the way you expect or if something weird's going to happen. It really just takes a couple garbage time plays to really mess up one of those big point spreads. So it's 11 points right now. Buffalo favored at Jets. The Packers managed to cover the 14.5. I like the Jets to cover the 11, partially because that's just a lot of points. This week I'm taking a lot of those point spreads. It's kind of an advantage for you. But the other thing, and I think the Jets are better than the Packers, who just managed to cover. So I'll take the Jets to cover. But also, I said this was going to be coming back later, Buffalo at Jets. They both play in the AFC East. The Jets are at home. The Jets are 11-point underdogs in a division game. Home division underdog. I read it in a comment on YouTube. I'm pretty sure that's where I got it. But I believe it to be true that home division teams, or in division games, when the home team's the underdog, they cover at an extraordinarily high rate, like 70% or something like that. So we should just be taking them every time. I think there's enough reasons combined with that logic that you just roll with it and you don't be afraid of big bad Buffalo. You take Jets plus 11. All right. Raiders at Jaguars. Jaguars, I think they won 2 games out of the gate, and right now they're on a 5-game losing streak. They're just not looking good. Trevor Lawrence is not, he's had 2 different coaches. The second one, has won a Super Bowl, so you'd think he's got some equity. And Trevor Lawrence is still just looking like a guy, not looking like the prince that was promised. But Etienne's playing well. And the Raiders, if we look at the other side of the ball, the Raiders are pretty bad. I view these teams as really similar. And they really shouldn't be talent-wise. I feel like the Raiders should be much better. But for whatever reason, the Raiders are playing so bad. I think they're both, 2-win teams. So you got the Raiders and the Jags. I feel that are pretty equal. It's at Jacksonville. Right now it's a 2.5 points in favor of the Raiders. I'm taking the Jaguars at home to cover that 2.5, just because I think the Raiders can't get out of their own way. Darren Waller's out. Not that he's really been an impact player. Josh Jacobs has been playing well. Etienne's been playing well. I don't know. I guess I'm just taking Doug Peterson over Josh McDaniels at this point and taking the home team plus the points. Pretty even teams. I thought about just not betting on this at all. there's very little chance I watch even a minute of this game. But I'll take the Jags plus 2.5. I need to start making progress in the other direction. So I'm pretty much in on all these games except for one. Speaking of which, moving into the afternoon games, there's only two afternoon games: Rams at Tampa, Seattle at Cardinals. Rams at Tampa. I think Tampa is favored -3, but they've just been playing so bad. And the Rams really haven't been playing any better. So these are two really untrustworthy teams. Did they just play each other? I feel like they just played each other because we talked about this last time. That'll come into play in here a second. Keep that in the back of your head. I feel like they just played each other, but I'm avoiding that matchup. I just don't really trust either team. I would probably take Tampa, but yeah, I mean it's kind of for. I mean I'll have the game on. Maybe I'll place a bet on it just because I'll probably be on Red Zone or something, or keeping tabs on both these games, whichever one's closer. But just slop. Don't feel good about taking either side. So other game, Seattle at Cardinals. Okay, so this is a tangent here, but these two teams just played each other in Week 6. It's now Week 9. So in Week 6, Seattle and the Cardinals played each other, and these are division games. So this is a 2-point swing when you play inside your division here in the NFC West. So these are the games that matter the most in terms of playoff standings and all that jazz. You can't schedule these teams so close together because ideally, you want at the beginning of the season you can be a very different team than later in the season. And if you have injuries, if you have a quarterback out or you have like your star running back out, star wide receiver out, it's not really fair to play two division games against the same team really close to each other, because if you have an injury, they could be out for both those games. And now they played you at your weakest, and then when you have a chance to get hot later in the season, you've already played them twice. It's already in the bag. So I feel like you got to spread these games out a little bit. I noticed that Seattle and Cardinals, a couple weeks apart, Week 6, Week 9, that's nonsense. I don't know what these schedules are up to. I noticed it also Panthers Falcons. They like played each other like last week, and the winner of that game was who would be leading the division. After that week's results. Then they play different people. Next week they play each other again. Division game, 1 week off, and they're playing each other again. I don't. It doesn't make any sense. I feel like I'm not used to seeing that in the past. And I've noticed a couple other times, and potentially with these Rams Tampa. I feel like it's happened a couple times. I don't remember really seeing that in past years. I'm really not sure what the NFL's up to, but you got to spread those games out. Early in the season, play your division opponents. Late in the season, play your division opponents. Figure out the schedule around that. In the NFL, in the NBA they play each other all like once or twice. NHL is kind of the same way. They both have big divisions, conferences. Especially in the NBA, it becomes more rivalries are based on the players because they move around a little bit, and not really based on the teams. Whereas in the NFL, like division rivalries are a real thing, and I think that's one of the secrets why the NFL really matters. And it just doesn't make sense to me to do the scheduling that way. Really, really not doing it justice, I feel like. Moving on. Oh, so did I make a pick? No, I didn't. So Seattle at Cardinals. They just played each other, and Seattle beat the Cardinals by 10. Cardinals are definitely an up-and-down team, a lot of dysfunction. Seattle, on the other hand, has been, I think they're winning the NFC West. They're pretty much writing their ticket to a playoff spot, because even if, San Fran or someone comes back in that division, Seattle has won enough games that they're going to have a good chance at a wild card for the NFC. That's, the whole NFL is not playing very well right now. So yeah, Seattle's on a 3-game win streak. Just beat Arizona, like I mentioned. Just beat the Chargers. Just beat the Giants. Those are all not great teams, but in that middle of the pack. Those aren't bad. It's not like they beat up on a bunch of bad teams. Those are all middle of the road teams. So, I like Seattle to keep it going. Right now they're +2 on the road. This is a division game, but the Cardinals are favored at home. I think Seattle's a better team. I'll take Seattle plus the 2. Moving on to Sunday Night Football. Titans at Kansas City. The Titans are 5-2 somehow. I don't know how I can think of a team as being that bad and them still be like 5-2. Both teams, Kansas City and Titans, are 5-2. Titans are really not good, but they're benefiting from playing in a really weak division with the Jaguars really doing poorly. The Colts obviously having a huge meltdown. I can't believe Frank Reich is still there. And who's the other team? The Texans. Yeah, the Texans are one of the worst teams in the NFL. I was hoping the Texans would be able to do a little bit better than like one win, but one of the worst teams in the NFL. So the Titans are pretty much just walking away with this division. And I don't think they're very good, especially, Tannehill in that passing game is kind of non-existent. Right now, Kansas City at home, they're minus 12.5-point favorites. And I'm taking the Titans to cover the plus 12.5. I think the Titans defense might be okay. And obviously Derrick Henry is starting to get rolling a little bit. I mean, if they feed Derrick Henry the ball 30 times and have decent time of possession, I don't think Kansas City's defense is that impressive. So even if they can slow Patrick Mahomes just a little bit so that they can and then just don't abandon the run, which I don't think they will. Just keep running the ball even when they get down by 10. I think they're going to be all right. They're going to run the ball. If they run the ball 30 times, 200 yards with Derrick Henry, even if KC goes out and wins, that should eat up enough clock and score enough points to cover 12 points. So 12.5. All right, Monday Night Football, last game of the week. Ravens at Saints. So this game is at the Superdome. The Saints have actually played teams. I mean, they're bad, but they've played teams pretty competitively throughout the season. I think they've actually won a couple games recently. So right now, it's Ravens -2 at New Orleans. Some strange statistical things happening here. The Baltimore D allows more yards. They're weaker against the run and the pass, but they have allowed less points this season. So it really depends. In determining defenses, it really depends on how you're going to choose to rank things. Baltimore D has given up less points. They have more turnovers, which is definitely part of it. But they've allowed significantly more yards. They're pretty weak against the run and the pass. Saints, on the other hand, they're significantly tougher against the run and the pass. I think they're like number 12 and number 14, whereas Baltimore's in the 20s. So I don't know. I guess I thought the Saints defense was better than Baltimore defense coming into this game. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I think that's a pretty tough Saints D that the Ravens are going to have to show up and play against. The Ravens are out Mark Andrews. Gus Edwards is doubtful for tomorrow. And then Rashad Bateman they've been playing without Rashad Bateman, but he just hit the IR. They literally just signed Deshaun Jackson at like 35 years old off the street to come play wide receiver for him. They are kind of in dire straits. And these Monday Night Football games, I've been terrible at picking them. I think initially I would have thought the Ravens -2, no problem. But, just given the injuries, I think the Ravens are going to struggle a little bit. I think the Saints might even win this game outright. I'm going to take the Saints +2 and maybe also put a money line bet on. So those are my thoughts. Might be a good idea to fade them just based on my record this year. But I think this week we turn it around. We're going to keep it rolling. Good luck.